Over a quarter of Americans admit to having negative feelings toward Muslims because of 9/11, according to a CBS News poll. The acts of a few extremists around the world and media portrayals have changed people's perceptions of the religion of Islam as a whole. This, in turn, has forever changed the way of life of many Muslims and how they are treated. It is important for people to be educated on Islam and what it does and does not teach so that the connection between the religion itself and terrorism can be severed. I'm Tasnia, and today I, being a Muslim myself, having done extensive research and interviewing two people who are heavily involved with the mosque, I'm here to provide you with a better understanding of Islam and how misconceptions have impacted the lives of Muslims. First, you will find out why the misconceptions of Islam being a religion that advocates violence are false, and second, how these misconceptions have impacted Muslims in this country. There are several reasons why discrimination against Muslims is based off of misconceptions and inaccurate information about Islam. Jihad is a highly misunderstood and misinterpreted concept in Islam, which leads people to believe that Islam advocates violence, because terrorists have used it to justify their own acts. First off, what is jihad? The literal meaning of the word jihad is a struggle. There are two types of jihad. The first type is the greater jihad, which is the internal struggle against the self and the temptations of this world, the egotistic desires, and the struggle against evil. The other form of jihad is the lesser jihad, which is the struggle involved with physical fighting, as in war, and is only to be waged in defense. Many believe that Islam advocates violence through the lesser jihad. However, why is terrorism or any other act related to it not justified by Islamic teachings?
This is against the Islamic teachings. One of the important verses in the Quran is, whoever saves a life, that means he saved the humanity. And whoever kills a person, that means as if he kills the whole humanity. That's me, it's a message to promote doing goodness in this life, okay? So it's against our teaching, Islamic teachings. So the main reason for this is we have a problem is who speaks in the name of God. So we have, for example, Al-Qaeda will say, okay, I speak in the name of God, and I'm the only one who can interpret the Quran or the Hadith, which is mean the prophetic Sunnah, and the way I see it. And that's something Islam prohibits. Many terrorists justify their acts by saying that they are doing it in the name of God and for the sake of defending their religion. This has led people to believe that Islam allows terrorism. However, this interview provides concrete proof that in Islam, terrorist acts are forbidden because they cross the limit of defense and that no religious sacrifice can justify injustice. What does Islam say regarding how Muslims should treat those of other religions? Does it support many terrorists' views that their actions are justified because they are fighting non-believers?
Terrorist is not justified by Islam. For one, there is a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He taught us, and even the Quran teaches us. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us, "Man adha dhamiyan falaysa minni." That means the word dhami, it means Christian or Jew or non-Muslim. Whoever harmed these two, he's not from me. This is the words of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we are not to harm anybody, but to say that because they are different, therefore we are justified for terrorism, to terrorize them and things like this is not justified.
This refutes people's idea that Islam does not tolerate other religions and that indeed it is a religion that advocates acceptance and coexistence of all religions. Therefore, the justifications of a terrorist who has the purpose of fighting non-believers has no basis in Islamic teachings. So what is there to say with those with Islamophobia? are those who fear Muslims. According to the following statistics, these fears have no basis in concrete evidence. According to William Easterly, professor of economics and co-director of developmental research at NYU, the ratio of the probability of a Muslim being a terrorist to the probability of a terrorist being a Muslim is 1 in 13,000. So even if the probability of a terrorist being a Muslim is 95.3%, the probability of a Muslim being a terrorist is only 0.0007%. That is less than the probability of a left-handed octogenarian Olympic discus thrower being struck by lightning. Here, we have concrete statistics that provide evidence that terrorism is not a common practice among Muslims, because an overwhelming majority are non-terrorist. People's misconceptions of any Muslim having a higher probability of being a terrorist than the average person is solely based on how many terrorist acts have been committed by Muslims, rather than how many Muslims have committed terrorist acts. We will now see how misconceptions of Islamic teachings is what leads to racial profiling of Muslims. This racial profiling tends to be ineffective and discriminatory. According to an article entitled Racial Profiling on Opposing Viewpoints, a flight bound for New York's LaGuardia Airport was accompanied on its descent by a military plane after a passenger raised suspicions about a group of entertainers from India who were passing notes and changing seats. The group was detained for questioning and released 5 hours later without being charged. The passengers were not terrorists. They were animated because they were excited about visiting New York. This is just an example of how racial profiling is taken too far and tends to be inaccurate because the profiling of Muslims has merely amounted to selective enforcement of the law against anyone with brown skin, even if there was barely any other evidence upon which suspicion could be justified. Another example of how racial profiling tends to be ineffective comes from a memorandum entitled Assessing Behaviors. This person noted, "Fundamentally, believing that you can achieve safety by looking at characteristics instead of behaviors is silly. If your goal is to prevent attacks, you want your eyes and ears looking for pre-attack behaviors, not characteristics." This supports the idea that the racial profiling of Muslims itself may backfire, because people focus so deeply on the physical characteristics of people as a way to justify their suspicion that they tend to forget that the whole purpose of questioning should be based on behavior. Abdul Qadir Omar, 22, was working for American Patriot Security in May 2009. A few months after he was hired, Omar was told he had to shave his beard. Omar, a Muslim, keeps his facial hair a certain way as a part of his religious beliefs. Despite the fact that he informed his supervisor about his beliefs, Omar was fired. This is an example of how racial profiling is ineffective and that it leads to violation of one's basic right to follow his or her own religion, as well as economic difficulties due to judgments people make based on a person's appearance. These judgments come solely from the fear and suspicion. It is important to understand that acts of a group of radicalists does not reflect the religion itself and its people. As you have seen, the teachings of Islam advocate peace, not violence. In the face of media portrayals of terrorists and misconceptions about the religion of Islam, people have the urge to question Muslims, leading to discrimination. It is important for people to educate others about the religion of Islam, or for those who have doubts to ask a Muslim about their religion. Furthermore, it is important to call people out when they make false accusations or jokes. The next time you hear about an act of terrorism on the news or see a woman with a headscarf or a man with a beard, hopefully you will think twice before making quick judgments or before you think you have reason to be fearful.